What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I am giving you my updated look at the 2021-2022 NFL season. We're going to go through every team, break down some games throughout their schedule. You'll be able to see my win-loss predictions, division record, home, away, all of that information. I am going to try to move quickly in this video as, 32 NFL teams. This video could turn out to be a really long one. So if you want to hear me talk more about your team, go check out my season preview series. I have a video dedicated to every team. And if it's not up on the channel yet, it will be very soon. So definitely go check out those videos. But hopefully you all enjoyed today's look at the 2021-2022 NFL season schedule. And if you do, please hit that like button. It really would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content like this, please consider subscribing. And down in the comment section, maybe tell me your favorite team, what games you think I'm wrong about, or who do I have winning too many games, who do I have too low. Give me all those thoughts that you have on today's video. But be respectful. Obviously, this can change a ton. I'm doing this before the end of the preseason. Maybe there's an injury, so there is a right for me to be able to back down on some of these takes. But as of right now, this is what I'm feeling for the NFL schedule. I'd love to have your thoughts. I'll respond to every comment. So let's talk about the NFL and its upcoming season down below. So the first time I did this video, also using playoff predictors, by the way, great site. Definitely encourage you to use it. But last time I did this video, I started with the AFC North. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. We're going to start with the AFC West and the Denver Broncos. And look, this is a team that outside of the quarterback position, this roster is awesome. And especially considering Quinn Miners looks like he will probably be the starter at center. That offensive line's really good. I love the pass catchers. Good running back duo with Melvin Gordon, Devontae Williams. The defense, if everybody's healthy, is fantastic. The secondary is deep as all get out. This team, outside of the QB position, is stacked. And I'm not saying it's impossible for a third-year leap out of Drew Lock. And I know he's had a good preseason. That's come against backups, though. So I'm a little hesitant, and I don't want to jump too far into his hype train. I do think he will be better this year, but with that said, they play in such a brutal division that a better Drew Lock probably isn't enough to beat the Chiefs. And they might take one against the Chargers, and I have them splitting against the Raiders. But outside of that, I don't know. I think it's a little tough to ask this Denver team to do much more than that. But week one, I think, really sets the tone. This is two teams where roster's really nice. You like everything outside of the quarterback position, and both teams are, banking on young QBs in year three, taking that step forward. So I give the Giants the edge there at home. Week four, really thought about this upset pick, and I would not be shocked whatsoever if the Broncos win this game, because that first month and a half of the year, playing in Denver is such a huge home field advantage. It's always home field advantage for Denver because of the altitude. But first month and a half of the year, it's insane. It's on another level. And because the Ravens are so run heavy, you figure fatigue will play a factor in that game. I did decide to go with Baltimore because they are the better team, but that's an interesting one. Pittsburgh, I think the Broncos can come away with one on the road there. Last year, these two teams played in Pittsburgh, which is kind of weird they're doing it back-to-back years, but it was the game where Drew Lock got hurt. It messed up his throwing shoulder, being hit from behind by Bud Dupree, and that kind of derailed the early start of the season for Drew Lock, and I felt like he could never get off on the right foot and then go from there. So maybe a chance for Denver to get some redemption, but I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning at home. They are very good at home. Really thought about the Raiders winning this game, and honestly, if you did something like this where it's a road split, I'd totally be down for that. I'll leave it like that. Like I said, playing in Denver first month and a half of the year is really hard, but Vegas is on a naturally higher elevation than that of Maryland. So I feel like the Raiders have a little bit easier of a task adjusting to the altitude, and plus this is about the week and a half or month and a half mark where it's still home field advantage for Denver, but it's not quite as extreme. So maybe it's a road split between these two teams, but it could also be a home split. Your choice there. And then this is kind of a tough stretch where going on and taking the Browns, they're just not as good on paper. This is a really fun matchup, and maybe Denver does win it at home. Wouldn't be surprised at all, but so much pass rush in this game. And ultimately, I just think Washington has, I think they have a better defense, but even if you consider them even, I think Washington's offense is just a little bit more explosive than that of Denver, just given Ryan Fitzpatrick's isms and what we've seen compared to Drew Lock. So right now, I feel confident with this, but I could in a few weeks' time switch. This was one of the toughest games to pick. And then on the road against Dallas, this is intriguing because this defense could slow down that offense. And then the Cowboys defense might be so bad that the Broncos offense looks good. But playing in Dallas, I decided to give the Cowboys that home game. Off the bye, taking one of the 2 games against the Chargers. That's a welcome sign. Tough to beat the Chiefs. Don't think they have the firepower, so I haven't getting swept there. Lions, Bengals, winnable games. Get one back on the Raiders here, and then end the year with back-to-back losses. But 7-10, not terrible, and that kind of sums up where this team, it feels like they are right now. And, because of this division, even I have the Raiders at 6-11, so I don't know. That's kind of tricky. Maybe the Raiders do sweep. I don't know. This is tough because of the talent in that division, specifically at the top with the Chiefs. It makes everything else really hard because you may like those rosters, but then it's tough to find matchups, and that's something you'll hear me say a lot in this video. So, started with the Broncos. Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, who I actually have at 6-11, worst team in the division. And I do like the Raiders, but it's a new offensive line. So where I think it still will be good, it might cause some problems more so early on. A couple losses, Ravens. Maybe they take this one in Hines, but again, the Steelers are really good at home. So, and this is the home opener. And I couldn't tell you the last time the Steelers lost a home opener. So that's kind of a tough draw there for the Raiders. But then they start to get things going here. Some favorable matchups. The Dolphins, maybe that's a controversial one. The Chargers, I think they just split. Bears, I think by this point, maybe we're seeing Justin Fields, but I don't know. That situation is still so murky. We'll talk about it later. Getting one from the Broncos, we talked about that already. And then they're better than the Eagles. So this is one where it was really difficult to pick, but John Gruden actually has a losing record off of the bye week. So because of that, I have the Giants taking this one at home. And then I do have them getting one on the Chiefs, just because it seems like they always play their best game of the year against Kansas City. So I would not be surprised if that trend continues, especially after coming off a bye, losing to the Giants. I could see them trying to bounce back in a perfect fashion. And winning against the Chiefs would be one heck of a way to get back on track. Beat the Bengals, they're just better. Cowboys, Raiders, really fun matchup. I'll give Dallas the advantage because they're at home. I think Washington's defense is just smothering, so really tough for the Raiders to overcome, especially when there's so much questions about the pass catching core. Like, will this offense be able to have someone be able to get open fast enough to take away Washington's pass rush? And as it stands right now, I don't think there's a guy on the roster. Maybe Bryan Edwards takes a step forward. We'll see. Henry Ruggs might be in for a big year, no doubt. But for right now, I am unshaken in the opinion that they just do not have somebody who can reliably get open. And against this type of pass rush, that's a problem. Gonna have them lose to Kansas City. They're not as good as the Browns. Lose to the Broncos there. It's basically just a split. Maybe the Raiders take both. That could be a coin toss. Colts getting one, and I'm low on the Colts, but these two teams, I don't know, I kind of feel like I have them in the same barrel where they could compete for a wild card spot. The Colts are better than the Raiders, but they both could compete for a wild card spot, but I think there's too many holes at important positions that hold them back. And then the Chargers ending out the year with a win against the Raiders. So 6-11 felt a little low because, this offense still has John Gruden, who's a great play caller. He's proven to be one of the most efficient offensive minds and play callers in the league. Derek Carr is an above average quarterback. Darren Waller's a matchup nightmare. The offensive line, I think I said, will still be good. Josh Jacobs behind a good offensive line, he's good. Kenyon Drake, some good depth. In the defense, I love the signing of Yannick Ngakoue. And Gus Bradley probably simplifies it all, but I also think cover 3 is starting to become outdated and teams are finding ways to pick it apart. So we'll see. Plus that linebacking core could be cause for concern, both in coverage but against the run. So on to the Los Angeles Chargers, 9-8, 6-6 in the conference, by the way. So hopefully you're checking out all this information. Kind of gives you an idea of some of the other ways I see these teams. I ultimately do have them. I don't think they'll be ready week 1. One, it's a cross-country trip. I know it's week 1, so you have plenty of time to make the travel. I totally get that. But especially because that pass rush is just so elite. And I think the Chargers offensive line's better, but it might take some time to gel. I have them getting this home game against the Cowboys, which initially I really don't want to have happen because that would mean we'll get to the Cowboys here pretty soon. But I have the Cowboys starting 0-2, and I could just see the headlines, all the panic, going from there. But after this week 2 game, the Cowboys have a pretty favorable schedule. But definitely a big win there because then the Chargers take on the Chiefs. So compared to an 0-3 start, 1-2 feels a whole lot better. And especially when you look at what I have going thereafter. Maybe they, flip games with the Raiders. I think they end on a good note. And it's kind of reminiscent to those early Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, LaDainian Tomlinson teams where the Chargers always, weirdly enough, got out to slow starts and then would just become scorching hot in the months of like December and January, which just does not make sense for this team based on the West Coast. But here I have history repeating itself a little bit. Maybe it's the other way around. The Raiders end the year with a win. Chargers take this one. Maybe the Chargers take both. You tell me. And then the Browns, Ravens, I just don't think the Chargers are as good. But coming off the bye week, big win here. This would be a huge win because especially when you consider last year's embarrassing loss. The Pats shut out the Chargers. Justin Herbert, that was the one game where he looked mortal in a lot of ways. So good chance for redemption there. And plus, I think bye week, and we start to get the second half of the schedule, that Brandon Staley defense, the chemistry and the pieces start to line up. And I think you'll start to see this team play better as the year goes on. The offensive line gains more continuity and the defense does as well. Back-to-back wins. Beating the Patriots, think they're better than the Eagles. This was a tough one. Gave it to the Vikings. There's always a few weird games and points of the schedule where you look at and you're like, how did that team win that game on the road? And these teams are probably about even when it comes to roster talent. Maybe I like the Vikings a little bit more, but you would think the Chargers being at home would negate that. It's just kind of tough. I think the Vikings ultimately can pick on that secondary a little bit, especially off of play action. If they can run the ball against the Chargers, I think that puts them in a favorable position. Basically, whoever's in the driver's seat of this game, whoever can get out on a quick start will come away with a win. I'm just banking on that being the Vikings from, this far out. Have them losing to the Steelers. This is a Sunday night football game, so definitely could switch back the other way. The Steelers are normally pretty good in prime time. And this is a game where I feel like the Steelers might be fighting for a wild card spot. But I mean, the same for the Chargers. So especially when you look at the seedings here, I have the Steelers ultimately as the 7th seed, Chargers is the 8th. This is going to be a big game on primetime television. So we'll see. Steelers pass rush is a lot. Maybe it can slow down the Chargers offense. But I could also see it the other way around where this Chargers offense is too high powered and they can get down the field too quickly and the Steelers can't play catch up. That one really is a coin toss. Have them splitting with the Broncos. We talked about that earlier. They're better than the Bengals. Like them at home against the Giants. Have them getting one against the Chiefs. And part of it's, we're about to show you the Chiefs schedule. I don't need to give them a loss at this point in the schedule, but it's just, otherwise the Chiefs basically end the year on like a 13-game win streak. And that's probably a little bit much of a stretch. But Herbert versus Mahomes, that's a really fun matchup. And I think the Chargers will show their progression, especially at this point in the year where they get things going with 6 straight wins. This is a huge W, and if it were to finish this way, Chargers 9-8, but with a win against Kansas City, they win 6 in a row. Remember, they won the last 4 last year. This would be a statement to the NFL world, like this team is emerging and about to become a problem in the AFC. They're better than the Texans. Have them splitting with the Broncos. Have them splitting with the Raiders. So 9-8, winning record, pretty solid mark there for the Chargers. Could also see them going 8-9, but if you flip the Steelers game, then they're 10-7 and then the 7th seed. So I think there's a lot of possibilities with this Chargers team. Like Brandon Staley, like the direction this team is heading. It's just a matter of time for when this team competes. And it does hurt when you have to play the Kansas City Chiefs twice a year. But I have the Chiefs going 15-2, and I have them as the best team in the AFC. No real surprise there. Have them out at a 9-0 start with wins over the Browns, the Ravens, the Bills, Titans, Packers. And you might just say that as like a cop-out, like I just bank it on the Chiefs being good, but week 1 at home, I'll take them over the Browns. The Ravens on paper, in theory, match up really well because they can slow the game down, make it about running the football and make it a defensive grind, but while that's sound in theory, it hasn't played to fruition, and the Chiefs just continue to have the Ravens number, so I'm going to continue to roll with history. Really thought about giving the Bills the win here, but part of it is then the Bills will be the number 1 seed in the AFC. Not entirely confident that could happen this year. Maybe in a year's time. We'll see, but I'm not feeling that way for this upcoming year. So Chiefs are at home. Give them the win there. Washington football team, that's an interesting matchup because the Chiefs spend so much money on their offensive line. Obviously, we talked about the pass rush a lot already for Washington. That is just a fun matchup. If the Chiefs' offensive line holds up, it pays good on that investment. But if it looks weak and Patrick Mahomes is scrambling around, reminiscent to that of the Super Bowl, well, Washington has a shot. And that makes that game really interesting. This game in Tennessee, really thought about giving it to the Titans. and 14-3, then I think that would have pushed the Titans to the number 2 seed. But this is going to be a fun one, offensively speaking. I just think the Chiefs have a few more defensive playmakers. I do like Jeffrey Simmons, and I think Bud Dupree, Harold Landry, especially if they're just allowing those guys rush the passer. There is some upside there with the pass rush and some turnover ability to be created. But, Tyrann Mathieu, Chris Jones, like Nick Bolton with Willie Gay Jr., I just think there's a little bit more. I'm basically banking this on the probability that there's going to be one big turnover that takes this game in the direction of the victor, and I'm banking on the Chiefs being the team that comes away with that. Again, it could be a coin toss. Tough if this game's in Tennessee. That's what makes it kind of a little bit more likely that the Titans win, but I still like the Chiefs there. Better than the Giants. I think this is Sunday Night Football. It's actually a 4 o'clock game per playoff predictors, but this game against the Packers is going to be so fun. Playing at Arrowhead, I'll give it to Kansas City, but the 2 best quarterbacks in the game right now, or the 2 best quarterbacks from last year, I don't know. However you slice it, this is one of the best quarterback matchups you'll see all year, and what a time it's going to be. Maybe this is another example of, defensive playmakers making the one play that comes away with the difference. Maybe then you'd say Green Bay, because Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Jair Alexander, Rashawn Gary, if you count him in that bunch, Zadarius Smith, you definitely do, Kenny Clark. The Packers definitely have some players who can come away with that one big play, maybe more than the Chiefs do. So maybe this actually goes in the favor of the Packers. I still have it with the Chiefs. We talked about that Raiders game earlier. I think they're better than the Cowboys. Off the bye week, favorable that they play the Broncos. Feels like a slam dunk win there. Get one back on the Raiders. We talked about the Chargers game. They're better than the Steelers. They're better than the Bengals. Already talked about the Broncos. So 15-2, number 1 seed in the AFC. The Chiefs look like a really good football team. Next is the New York Jets. And the first time I did this video, I had it 3 wins, but I made it known that this team is probably closer to 5 to 7. And I have them at 5. I originally went through the schedule prior to the Carl Lawson injury, but now I'm recording this after it. That definitely probably puts them closer to this mark. I really do worry about that pass rush now. I was already concerned about it because Lawson's an upside play and you're hoping he can hit his potential, but we haven't really seen the best of what Carl Lawson could be yet, so some of that was projection with what he could be. Have a winning week 1 against Carolina, the Sam Darnold versus his former team, battle, however you want to word that. I think the Jets are just a better football team, which maybe that's crazy for me to say, but I just think the Jets are better. Plus, the Panthers are favored, so if you live in a state where you can bet, definitely encourage you putting some money on the Jets. Feels like a slam dunk there. I do have them splitting with the Patriots. Yes, I do here, week 7. And I have the road split, which is interesting. Part of that's because of the bye week here in week 7, so that's kind of how I see that matchup playing out. I think these two teams are starting to hit that equilibrium where they're getting closer and closer to even. Part of it, obviously, losing Tom Brady a year ago for New England kind of brought them back down to earth, and the Jets are starting to move in the right direction. Obviously, we like Robert Saleh. The offense has a ton of firepower. The offensive line's pretty well built, which is surprising. If you asked me when I first did this video, there's no shot I would have thought that offensive line would be something I didn't deem a weakness, but it's constructed itself well since then to now. Broncos, I just think, despite the offensive line being really good, I think there's a little too much defense for Denver. That pass rush will create some big plays. Plus, the secondary is fantastic. So there's an answer for Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder, Denzel Mims. We'll see how much he sees the field. Corey Davis. I just think the Broncos match up with them really well. And the Jets defense, especially with no Carl Lawson, really weak. I think this is a game where Drew Lock could ball out and people start really buying into his hype. Titans, just better. Falcons, you could swing this one back in the other direction, but Falcons being at home gave them the home field nudge. Really probably should have done the same thing here with Cincinnati, but I was having a hard time finding the Bengals some wins. This is going to be a shootout. This game, no doubt in my mind, 38-35, something along those lines. This maybe even more. There is no defense to be found in this game. This is going to be such a fun matchup. A lot of good young wide receivers. This is one where when we get to week 8, stack your DFS lineup with Jets and Bengals players. I have the Bengals coming away with the road win. Not too far of a travel, so maybe that also played it in my mind. Colts are a better team right now than the Jets. Bills have them sweeping the Jets. Really thought about maybe week 18, the Jets end on a high note, end their 4-game losing streak to end the year. But the Bills are just a better team. Plus the Bills, assuming they're fighting for this number 2 seed like I have it here, they're a 1-game advantage over Tennessee. This game will have some gravitas to it, so I think the Bills will play starters. If not, though, maybe do give this one to the Jets. Have them splitting with the Dolphins. They're better than the Texans, better than the Eagles. The Saints game, they're at home, so I really would not be shocked if the Jets won this. I am fading the Saints like no other. Part of it is the Michael Thomas injury, but part of it is I really am not enamored by that roster. We'll talk about them later. We talked about the Dolphins already. This is the fun one, obviously, number 1 versus number 2 pick. I think the Jags start to get some momentum towards the end of the year. Urban Meyer in his first year as a coach starts to settle down, get a feel for it. Trevor Lawrence, a lot of the same things. And I know he did look a little shaky in that first preseason game, but I think it's, just a timing thing, and it's going to take a few reps for him to settle in. And part of it, I think, was nerves in that first preseason game. Obviously, that will slowly go away. The Bucs, no shot. And then, like I said, the Bills coming away with this game in Week 18. So 5-12, step in the right direction, and they have 2 first-round picks. So I really would not be surprised if this team, grabs a corner, grabs an edge rusher in the, top 20, 25 picks next year's first round, and then people start really pushing this team as kind of like the Chargers this year, where they could make it into the playoffs as a wild card team. Next up, Miami Dolphins, 9-8. This is a really tough one because I do think Tua plays better this year. I'm not on board the notion that he's just going to be a bum his entire career. They added weapons. They changed the offensive scheme. All that will help Tua. The offensive line is a bit of a concern, and the running game as well. Because while I do think Tua will be better, I don't think he'll be the elite prospect that I assumed he would be when I saw him come out in the second half of the national championship game 4 years ago. I don't think he'll be as elite as I once thought he would be 3-4 years ago, but I still think he'll be a capable plus level quarterback. But because of that, he'll need a good offensive line, he'll need a running game to help, and I don't think this team is there just yet. So now looking at their schedule, have them losing this first game against the Patriots, but ultimately it's a season split. Have them getting swept by the Bills. I just think the Bills are a better team, plus a tough matchup. And I think if you look at, again, I'm kind of relying on PFF with some of this information, but when you just look at, even from an outside perspective, teams that stayed really healthy, Miami was able to do that. That's tough to do year in and year out. Plus the turnover margin. I think Pittsburgh is actually a team that really encapsulates that, where they were 11-0 and they had the best turnover margin in football, and then they end the regular season on a 1-4 stretch, and they had more turnovers than created. So turnover margin is just tough to stay consistent throughout an entire season, but then to do it back-to-back years, not entirely sold on that happening. But also I think injuries will play into the mix, whether it's Byron Jones, maybe Xavier Howard, maybe Jalen Phillips. Somewhere there on that defense, I think there's going to be some cracks because of players going down with injuries. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a step backwards for Miami. I know a lot of people are putting them in the playoff conversation. I think there's going to be something that keeps them from reaching that point. In this game against the Raiders, probably on paper you'd probably say the Dolphins are better, but you're going from Miami out to Vegas. I know the settings might be similar, especially early on in the year, but that's a long ways to travel. Obviously, it's a 4:00 game that helps a little bit, but I just think the Raiders come away with that one. It's more of a gut feeling game. Have them beating the Colts here, and again, I'm low on the Colts. This will also depend. It sounds like Carson Wentz, Quentin Nelson will be ready week 1, which is super interesting. I worry that team might rush them back. I know their front office and their coaching staff has said they don't want those guys out there until they're 100%, so maybe that does hold them out of this game. This one's a true wild card, but even if Wentz and Nelson are playing, I do like the Dolphins better than the Colts, and that just kind of puts where I have Indy in my mind in perspective. They're not as good as the Bucs. They're better than the Jags. They're better than the Dolphins, or the Falcons, excuse me. Better than the Texans. Not as good as the Ravens. This is all kind of straightforward. Have them splitting with the Jets. I think that equilibrium state's starting to get there too. The Jets are really becoming a better team overall. Better than the Panthers. Like them at home against the Giants. Off the bye week, that's where I have them beating the Jets. This game against the Saints, Monday Night Football, the Saints are normally pretty good prime time, but like I said, I'm fading the Saints, so I like Miami in that contest, and it's a strong end of the year. And when talking about the offensive line, maybe people start to get back from injuries. I think this team could have some forward momentum to end the year, and kind of what we talked about with the Chargers, it's one of those statement ends to a year where teams are like, okay, they ended the year on a high note. They're starting to piece things together, give them another offseason, spend some money, use their draft capital. This team is on the up and up, especially the Dolphins. They have, some first-round picks, some 2s, some 3s to play around with. Maybe they make a big trade. Maybe they just use it on guys who can help right away. This team overall, I think, is drafted pretty well outside of maybe the offensive line, but that still remains to be seen. But with those picks, they could, find a running back in the future. They could, patch up the offensive line. They could do the same thing in free agency. It's still a step in the right direction, despite it being, a 9-win season after they won 10 last year, if that makes sense. The 6th seed is the New England Patriots. I have them going 10-7, 5-3 at home. We talked about some of these division games. I do like them at home against New Orleans, but I think the Saints might be able to pull this one off on the road. This is a tough one. And it's also challenging to gauge the Patriots. I think Mac Jones has looked fantastic, and I think he should be the starter. But other side of the same coin, man, did Cam Newton look pretty good in that second preseason game too. So, and maybe this offense is just set up in a way where regardless of who's under center, they're zigging when everyone else is zagging. Everyone wants to build an offense that looks like Kansas City. Like, think about Buffalo. They're trying to replicate what Kansas City has. Maybe the Patriots are just buckling down and saying, no, we're going to go 2 tight ends. We're going to run the ball out with Damian Harris. Ramondre Stevenson's looked really, really good. I think they do move on from Sony Michel, but that's a different point. And that allows them to use Cam Newton's legs if he's the starting quarterback, or use it to set up play action and downfield passing with Mac Jones, where he is better right now than where Cam Newton is at. I don't know. This team is really interesting. When I first did this video, I had them with more wins, 10-7. I have them coming down a little bit. This team is kind of tough to gauge, especially now that the quarterbacks are looking good. I kind of want to bump up their win total a little bit. Don't see them beating the Bucs here. The Bucs are just a better team overall, but also this is like a history game. Tom Brady returning to Foxborough. If stats line up well, he could pass Drew Brees for the all-time passing yardage record. So it's kind of a storybook game. I think the Bucs come away with a win there. But in the Texans, home against the Cowboys, kind of a coin toss game. Give it to the Patriots because Foxborough is a tough place to play. Talked about the Jets already. Have mentioned this one already, but this is another coin toss one. I don't know. Ultimately, I think the Chargers offense does just enough to come away with a win here. And it's a revenge game. They got embarrassed last year. That has to play a factor for those guys who were returning from that team last year. They're better than Carolina, not as good as Cleveland. Better than the Falcons, not as good as the Titans. Kind of get the drift here. A lot of this is based off of where I see them on paper. Off the bye week, good time to have it on the road before you take on Indy. 2 teams that could be competing for a wild card spot. I know I'm a little low on the Colts, but realistically speaking, the Colts will be in the mix, especially right around this window. They'll be in the playoff hunt. So a good time for your bye week. Get rested up, get healthy, get one on the road. Have them losing the Bills here. We talked about that already. Better than the Jags, splitting with the Dolphins. And yeah, that puts them in the playoffs as the 6th seed. So pretty solid step in the right direction for not only Bill Belichick, but the Patriots overall. On to the Buffalo Bills, 14-3, 9-0 at home. Is that sustainable? Probably not. But we'll talk about it. Have them winning week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're just a better team, and they're at home. I will say Bills Mafia makes that environment really tough to play at. So going 9-0 maybe isn't out of the realm of possibilities. Taking one on the road here against the Dolphins. Like them at home against Washington. They're better than the Texans. Talked about this game a little bit earlier with the Chiefs. It's a shootout, and the Bills are building their offense to look like Kansas City, where they can just air it out, run the football when they need to. The offensive line is solid enough. The Chiefs may be above average now after this offseason. And then just finding defensive playmakers as opposed to a good whole defensive unit, where I do think they have an advantage. Sean McDermott, a great defensive mind, and Steve Spagnuolo has done a lot of good things in Kansas City, but I think McDermott, you'd give the edge there when it comes to defensive play callers, creative minds, however you want to spin it. This is a tough game, week 6 in Tennessee. Did give it to the Bills. I think the Bills are just slightly better, but this obviously has a lot of implications if you look at the 2-3 seed here in the AFC, so definitely check out that game. I just think the Bills are a little bit better as it stands right now. Off the bye week, take this game against the Dolphins. They're better than the Jags, the Jets, and the Colts. The Saints taking this game against the Patriots. Have them splitting ultimately. I'm just not 100% sold that the Bills are going to be able to take both from New England. It's still that little brother, big brother kind of aspect to it. So because of that, I still have Big Brother getting one of the 2 against the Bills. Don't think they're quite as good as the Bucs, but that would be an awesome preview to a potential Super Bowl matchup. That game could be really, really fun. Better than the Panthers, Falcons, and the Jets. This is one of the best teams in the AFC. Love that offense. Love Josh Allen. He was my number 1 player out of that draft class. Thought the Browns should have taken him with the number 1 pick. Obviously didn't have the channel yet, but I was doing mock drafts for my radio show and all that fun stuff. Really enjoyed that. It was, conversation of Sam Darnold versus Josh Allen. I'm a big Josh Allen guy. And I think there's some defensive playmakers. I think Tremaine Edmonds takes a big leap forward this year. Matt Milano takes a step back in the right direction. Tre'Davious White, he's a stud. So those enough defensive playmakers, plus the added pass rush with Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham Jr. I think they're going to start seeing some more hurries turned into sacks, which is obviously going to help this defense reach a new level. We're on to the AFC South, and this one will be a quick, I'm sorry, Texan fans, go check out that season preview video. I think you guys ultimately win more than one game, but maybe you win 2 or 3. It's just a bad team. And their over-unders at 4. I'm hammering the under. This is just not a good team. I don't think Deshaun Watson plays this year, but Deshaun Watson won 4 games last year. And now they don't have JJ Watt. There's a new coaching staff, turmoil, conspiracy, everything that could go wrong with the team is right now. Like, this is as low a point I've seen a team at, because I just don't know what the future holds. Their most valuable asset has 22 sexual harassment and assault charges against him, so his trade value is minimized exponentially. So just a tough time to be Texans fans. Ultimately, I have them winning a game against the Panthers, and obviously you can tell I'm pretty low on the Panthers as well. So maybe even Carolina wins that game. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this team goes 0-17. It's almost interesting. Comment what you think might be more likely: Texans going 0-17 or the Bucs going 17-0. I think out of those, probably more likely the Texans go winless. But it's just a tough time to be a Texans fan. There's probably some close games in here. The first time I did this video, I had them stealing one game from the Colts. Actually, I think it was this Week 13 game at home. Thought about doing it again. I didn't want to anger Colts fans too much. They already hate me a ton. Maybe this game at home against the Jets could be a sneaky one. One of the 2 games against the Jags, that's certainly in play. Maybe Week 1. Wouldn't rule that out. And yeah, that's probably about it. But that's a tough time to be a Texans fan, so I'm sorry I didn't add any positive light to it. Jags going 5-12, definitely a big step in the right direction, considering they won 1 game last year, and that was Week 1. Have them winning Week 1 again this year, but maybe the Texans do steal this one. I could see it. I really wouldn't be surprised. I could see David Culley having that team fired up right away. But after that, they're not as good as the Broncos, Cardinals. This Bengals game is intriguing. Matchup between back-to-back number 1 overall picks, Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. But because it's a Thursday night game, Jags have to travel, short week. I give the edge there to Cincinnati. Tennessee's better, Miami's better, Seattle's better, Bills are better, Colts are better. Actually, you have this as a season series split, which this game is going to irritate Colts fans. This is going to be the new game that every Indy fan tells me how I'm crazy about, and I totally get it. I know I'm low on the Colts, and I'm embracing the hate, but I do think the Jags end the year on a somewhat positive note, going 3-4, and that's, or 3 of 4, going 3-1 over a 4-game stretch. My apologies, but I think this is going to be another one of those situations where you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel and what this team could become. I think the Jags are 2 years away compared to the Chargers and some of the other teams we talked about where they're a year out. I think the Jags are about 2 years away from really doing that, but this will be a solid end of the year to get that forward momentum. Granted, they come in games against the Texans, the Jets, and then splitting the series with the Colts. So nothing too much to hang your hat on when it comes to competition, but I do think it's a positive step forward for Jacksonville. The Indianapolis Colts. Look, Colts fans, I did it. It's an 0-5 start. This is as brutal a schedule. So I will say, while I am low on the Colts, going 7-10 with this schedule, specifically this start to it, is remarkable. This with a normal schedule, this is probably like a 9-10 win team. But Seattle Week 1, when you might not have Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson, tough matchup. The Rams are just better. The Titans are better. Miami, maybe the Colts take this one on the road. I could see that. Just because if they start 0-3, desperate natures, put your back against a wall. I could see them coming away with that one against the Dolphins. But even right now, I think the Dolphins are better. And Miami's at home. Ravens, they're just better. Get their first win after starting 0-5 against the Texans. By now, you should have Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson back. They're not as good as the 49ers, but then I have them getting some redemption, right? They split the series with the Titans. I think the Colts match up really well with the Titans. What is the difference here is Tennessee being at home, and it's just a rocky start. Maybe Carson Wentz isn't 100%, they don't play him. We'll see. That's obviously a huge question mark, but they do get one back on Tennessee. Like it more than the Jets, the Jags. I think this is going to actually turn into a pretty close game. Just kind of a gut feeling, but that's where the 3-game losing streak comes to a close. Not as good as Tampa. They beat the Texans here, which, like I said, in the first time I did this video, I had the Texans winning this home game. So Really thought about it. And both teams are on the bye week here. So both teams are actually coming off of a week of rest and preparation. I think the Patriots are better. So give it to them on the road. But that is going to be a fun matchup. Frank Reich versus Bill Belichick. Just the coaching aspect. That's going to be a really fun week and fun game to watch. Then they're better than the Cardinals, especially considering the Cardinals tend to get out to hot starts, simmer out at the end of the year. So because of that, maybe this is a 50-50 game I gave the Colts. So maybe you flip these two games. Colts win this one, Cardinals win that one. It kind of plays out perfectly. Plus Saturday. We love Saturday football in December. Have them winning this one against the Raiders. Do have the Jags ending their season with a loss. Maybe you say they beat the Jags. They sweep the Jags, I should say, and finish the year 8-9. Wouldn't argue with you. This is a good team. And, a lot of people are betting over, thinking they can get to 10 wins. I just think this schedule's really, really brutal. Plus injury problems. And they just have holes at too many important positions. Like wide receiver. I'm as big a Michael Pittman fan as there is. Like I loved him coming out of USC. But I don't know about him as a number one. Like he feels like a good number two. And they just don't have a guy who's a dude. They just don't have that dude who can always convert on the 3rd and 8, get open in big situations, make big plays that are the difference in a game at the wide receiver position. And even in the secondary, right? Like I love Kari Willis and Julian Blackman, or Justin Blackman. Love those safeties. The cornerback position, you got a good bounce back year at Xavier Rhodes. Does that happen? Does that continue? That's questionable. Rock Ya-Sin, I liked him a lot out of Presbyterian. He's been someone that Colts fans are very disappointed with. Do really enjoy Kenny Moore. He's one of the best nickel corners in the game, and he can play out on the boundary, but that's one of your 3 cornerbacks that you can count on. The other 2 have some question marks with them. Edge rush, can Kwity Paye make an immediate impact? That remains to be seen. So I think this team just has too many question marks at too many important positions. That's why I'm a little hesitant to jump on their hype train. Tennessee Titans, though, not afraid to jump on this hype train. 13-4, the number 3 seed in the AFC. This is a team that has put all their resources in, just like Green Bay and the LA Rams. They have put all their resources into dudes. Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, Julio Jones, Ryan Tannehill's emerged as a really, really nice quarterback. And on the defensive side, Jeffrey Simmons is going to have to get better this year. Adding Bud Dupree. Ultimately, I think it's more of a scheme thing, but they need to just let Harold Landry rush the passer. And if they do, his numbers will step back in the right direction. Bud Dupree, I think it's a nice compliment on the other side, and it's better than ultimately Jadeveon Clowney when it comes to producing sacks. Clowney did have a fair amount of QB hurries and pressures, so we'll see if Bud Dupree can match that and then just turn them into sacks. That would be a big step in the right direction for Tennessee. The X factor is Caleb Farley. If he's healthy and he can be what he has been billed as, that's the number 1 cornerback. Jack Rabbit Jenkins is your number 2. That's solid. Christian Fulton, Elijah Molden can both play in the nickel. Molden, Amani Hooker, like them as your strong safety, hybrid types of guys. And then Kevin Byard still plays some good football at the free safety spot. So do like this team a lot on paper and have them getting out to a 5-0 start against, mostly weak competition. Like they're better than Arizona. They're better than the Colts in my eyes. Do have them splitting that series. We talked about that already. Better than the Jets, better than the Jags. This game against Seattle, maybe that's a little questionable for them to go on the road, but I think it's going to be another case of Seattle having such a bad defense early on. Then it gets a little better as the year continues. I think Tennessee's able to match that when it comes to offensive production. Like Russ Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, totally get where people are loving that team, and they have some firepower, no doubt. But Tennessee has just as much, if not more. Plus a more stable offensive line and a better running game. So I give Tennessee that one on the road. Plus a few more defensive playmakers, I think, can come away with some big plays in that game. Like the Bills, like the Chiefs, so back-to-back losses. Actually, I have them going on a 4-game losing streak here. That's probably not going to happen. So maybe you do something like this. Colts get the road game. They don't start 0-5, but then they drop this game week 8. I still think it's a split there, but then it goes from 4-game losing streak to just 2 with another loss to the Rams, who the Rams are better. So it's kind of schedule manipulation here on the fly. I think they're better than the Saints, better than the Texans, yada, yada, yada. Talked about the Patriots already. Off the bye week. You kind of wish this could have come before a bigger matchup, but division game, it'll be tough. Beat the Jags. They're better than the Steelers. This game against the 49ers, what ultimately made me, originally I had the Niners winning this game just because I think the Niners might be a little bit better on paper. Thursday night, cross-country trip for San Francisco on a short week. Give me Tennessee all day, every day, barring crazy injuries. Like him more than the Titans, end the year with a win against the Texans. I think it's one of the best teams in the AFC, and overall, have them as the number 3 seed, going 13-4. Cincinnati Bengals, I think they're probably better than 4 wins, despite all the negative buzz they've been getting at training camp, but it's just tough to find matchups I like with this team. Like, the Vikings are better. If this is Andy Dalton revenge game, the fact it's in Chicago, I'll give the edge to Dalton, which it's tough to say, but also that defense will come away with some big plays, and maybe that offense is a little sluggish out to start. That pass rush versus that offensive line, give me Chicago for sure. Pittsburgh, I think they do split. You'll see that here, week 3, week 12, going to the home teams. Zach Taylor has put together some good game plans against Pittsburgh, which is weird because I definitely think he's on the hot seat, and I haven't been overly impressed with what he's done so far. But that said, he's been able to put up some good games against Pittsburgh, so I think Pittsburgh's better on paper, but I see those two teams splitting their series. We talked about this one earlier. Thursday night, Jags have to travel, so I'll take the home team with Cincy. Packers, they're just better. Lions, I think the Lions could make this game interesting, but give me the Bengals. They're better right now. Ravens, I'm not taking the Ravens. I'm not taking the Bengals in Baltimore. Again, we talked about this one. It's definitely going to be a shootout. Whoever has the ball last probably wins this game. Browns are better. Like the Raiders at home. Chargers are better. Niners are better. Broncos are better. Ravens are better. Chiefs better. Browns are better. So it's like you see this 6-game losing streak, and maybe you could flip some of the games, get Cincinnati up to 5, 6, maybe even 7 wins. But are they better than the Chargers on paper if everybody's healthy? No. Are they better than the Niners? No shot. Denver. In Denver, give me the Broncos. Ravens, Chiefs, Browns, no doubt there. So I think ultimately 4-13 gets Zach Taylor hired, and we'll talk about this with Arizona later. That might be the best step in the right direction. That could be like the best thing this team could do in the offseason to maximize the talent on the roster. And that's nothing against Zach Taylor. Obviously, he's an NFL head coach, and I'm not, so he knows a lot more than I do. But I just don't think he's the guy for this team right now. So I think a coaching change will help this team exponentially. 4-13 gets them there. Pittsburgh Steelers going 9-8, finishing as the 7th seed. I go back and forth because the offensive line definitely worries me, but the offense that Matt Canada is drawing up, and they're utilizing play action at a higher rate, all that can hide and minimize weaknesses across the offensive line. So I think there might be just enough there to hide that weakness and get the most out of the skill position group, get Big Ben back on track, top half the league caliber quarterback, and then the defense, while losing some players in free agency, is still very good, top 5 worthy, and because of that, they sneak into the playoffs. But then the Chargers, they really comes down to this Week 11 game. But going through the schedule, they're not as good as the Packers here. We talked about this Raiders game. That could be a toss-up. They're better than the Bengals, but have them splitting there. Like Tennessee more. We're starting to get to the point where we're overlapping. This is technically the 17th game of the year. This is the game that got added to the schedule. And 2 years ago, Big Ben got hurt at home against Seattle week 2. So this is kind of a fun rematch of sorts. But I like Seattle on the road. But that's a good case of great offense versus really good defense. So that's a tricky one. Off the bye week, thought about giving Pittsburgh this one against Cleveland. And I have them splitting the season series. I don't know. That one's so tough. But the Browns are good. Have them at home. Basically, that's how I have the split really going, as the home teams taking their respective game. Maybe it's the other way around. This could be really fun. 1, this is on my birthday, so I plan on trying to make my way out there. But 2, is this Justin Fields? Because if it's Fields, mobile quarterbacks have given Pittsburgh some problems over the years. That game could get interesting. Plus, it's Monday Night Football, so all eyes are on it. That's a narrative game for sure. Better than the Lions. Talked about this game against the Chargers. Sunday Night Football, that's a big game. If Pittsburgh wants to make the playoffs, same thing could be said about the Chargers. The Ravens are just better. I have them splitting. I actually have it going the road split. I feel like these teams go road split often, so kind of just hoping history repeats itself with that pick. But ultimately, I do think those two teams split their series. This game against the Vikings in Minnesota on Thursday Night Football, I feel like I'm kind of breaking my rule, but not every team is going to win Thursday Night Football at home. I think this is one of those rare cases where the road team comes away with the win. I think the defense is enough to try to slow down that Minnesota offense, specifically the pass rush versus, while I think Minnesota's offensive line's better, it's still being workshopped sort of. So because of that, I like the Steelers in that matchup. Tennessee's just better. The Chiefs are better. Split here with the Browns, and then taking one against the Ravens, and then they take on the Bills in the playoffs. So I have the Pittsburgh Steelers going 9-8. and it continues. That would give Mike Tomlin the NFL record for most consecutive winning seasons. That'd be an awesome statement. Baltimore Ravens, one of the better teams in the AFC, 5 seed, so top wild card spot. Taking a game against the Raiders, like them a lot there. Again, we talked about this Chiefs game earlier. Feels like they should match up better, but they just don't. Better than the Lions, better than the Broncos, Colts. This game could be 50-50, but give me the Ravens at home. Off the bye week, good time to take on the Vikings. That's going to be a tough game, but at home also a big advantage there. Taking this one on the road, part of this is, factoring in there's going to be some sort of injury there for Miami, but even just being able to take the air out of this game and just make it a ground and pound contest, all about the defenses. I think both these teams have good defenses. So then if it does come down to the run games, obviously I'm going to go with Baltimore there. Like it more than Chicago, but this could be fun if you see Justin Fields, obviously mobile dynamic quarterback against Lamar Jackson. That'd be a lot of fun. I just think the Ravens are further along in their process. Have them splitting with the Browns. This is such a good matchup, and they play twice over 3 games. So have the home teams coming away with the victories in those matchups, with the Steelers game penciled in between. As I talked about, I have them splitting, Ravens taking the first. Packers are just a little better, so despite them being on the road, I do think the Packers, kind of like the Chiefs, where it feels like the Ravens can make this into a running contest, which even then, I feel comfortable with Green Bay's rushing attack with Aaron Jones, like him a lot. But that said, I just think that the Packers will get out to an early start, write the game script, and force Baltimore play from behind. That seems to be a commonality and something the Ravens cannot get over the hump with against teams like Kansas City and like Green Bay. So if that trend continues, give me the Packers. They're better than the Bengals. Like the Rams, even though they're on the road and it's a cross-country trip, and I'm going to make a case for the Rams losing a weird game later, but this game's at 4. That helps a little bit. Not a whole lot. I get that. Cross-country trip, so maybe you do give the Ravens a win. This one could be a coin toss for sure. And then the Steelers we'd already talked about. So 12-5, the 5 seed, top wildcard spot. This Ravens team is super dangerous. Last team in the AFC, the Cleveland Browns. The 4 seed felt a little low, but same record as the Titans, so really just comes down to whatever the tiebreakers would be. So starting out 0-1 against the Chiefs. That's just a tough draw, but that will be a fun game. Playoff rematch. I am looking forward to it. Maybe the Browns do steal one on the road. That'd be really exciting. It'd be a fun way to start the year if the Browns were able to do that. Kind of put the Chiefs on shock right away. Better than the Texans. Better than the Bears. This is a really intriguing one. One, because it's in Minnesota, but obviously Kevin Stefanski comes from Minnesota, and these offenses are so similar. They set up the run game, play action boot, trying to utilize downfield weapons. If OBJ is healthy, then it's like OBJ, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, specifically like OBJ versus Thielen. Those guys get used as those downfield weapons a ton. And then Thielen, Jarvis Landry, Thielen's better, but kind of that intermediate route running type. Really fun to compare those teams and some of the similar parallels. But I do like the Browns just a little bit more, specifically on defense, though I think the Vikings defense is a little better. And of these two teams, I will say the Vikings definitely have a better run defense, so I don't know, I'm kind of starting to convince myself to maybe like the Vikings in this game. I'm going to stick with the Browns, but that one's definitely a coin toss. I like them a little bit more than the Chargers, especially early on. I think the Chargers do get off to that slow start. We talked about the offensive line needing some continuity, the defensive scheme kind of falling into place. Like them at home against the Cardinals, Broncos, and the Steelers. Nice little home stretch there. That's kind of that's pretty rare, especially Thursday Night Football at home. This is one of the times I'm going to go with the rule as opposed to the exception. Having Denver travel from Denver on a short week, definitely advantageous for Cleveland. Have them sweeping the Bengals. They're just better. They match up better with them, too. They're going to pick that Cincinnati defense apart. I feel really bad for Bengals fans in those games. And then week 10 here in Foxborough. This is an intriguing game in 2 different ways. If it's Mac Jones starting, they might be able to pick on that secondary. Is Greedy Williams finally the guy we thought he could be out of LSU? Is Greg Newsome playing good football right away? I like the safeties, but that secondary still has the potential to be picked on a little bit. And I like the Patriots offensive line that could slow down what should be a pretty solid Cleveland pass rush, specifically Myles Garrett. He does a lot of the heavy lifting there. And also, this interior of the Browns defense, I like Anthony Walker, but he's nothing exceptional at that middle linebacker spot. In the IDL positions, no real run stopper there that really jumps off the page. The Patriots could run the football down Cleveland's throat, and if it's Cam Newton starting, he adds on to that. But if it's Mac Jones to continue that point, setting up play action, downfield passing, this could be a game at home too. I'm starting to like the Patriots a little bit more the more I think about it, but on paper, the Browns are a better team. They're really well-rounded, and considering they run the ball, and I do like their defense a lot more this year, I think that will travel well and allow them to get the, quote-unquote upset just because they're on the road. Better than the Lions, splitting with the Ravens, and it definitely helps in the second matchup coming off a bye week compared to Baltimore playing a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to feel like the Ravens are going to be a little more gassed after that one, so that helps the Browns at home. Better than the Raiders. This game against the Packers, like, if Green Bay gets out to a quick start, and even if they do, like, obviously Cleveland has the capabilities of being able to throw the football. Like, they're not afraid to use Baker Mayfield, obviously. They want to, if anything, they'd like to see if he can handle that type of situation. So when they pay him, they can feel a little bit more confident that he's not going to deteriorate and become a bad investment like that of Carson Wentz and Jared Goff as of right now with their current contracts. But I think the star power is a little bit more in the favor of Green Bay, and they're at home. So that's where I went with the Packers, plus Saturday football. We love that. Nothing that really dictates the game, but it's just fun to see SA here on the screen. Have the Steelers getting this one on the Browns. This one really could be a sweep. Like, if you told me the Browns sweep the Steelers, I wouldn't be surprised. And then that would move the Chargers at 9-8 into that 7 spot, and I wouldn't be shocked. And to give Mike Tomlin his first sub-500 record as the coach of the Steelers, which would be really sad. And then they're better than the Bengals. So have them with the playoff matchup against the Ravens. Ignore Week 19. We'll go through that here in a moment. But we're on to the NFC. And here we're working top down the screen. Green Bay, 13-4, the number 3 seed. Maybe that's a little low. I guess I do have the Rams to the 2 seed. That's kind of surprising in my eyes. But love them in this game against the Saints. I actually put some money on this game while I could, months ago when the Saints were actually favored because they were at home. Really looking forward to making some money off of that game. Fingers crossed. Better than the Lions. The 49ers are just the perfect matchup, and they're in San Francisco. I think that pass rush will give that offensive line, specifically because that Green Bay O-line is worse this year than it has been in a while. So really like San Francisco in this one. Like it better than the Steelers on paper, better than the Bengals, better than the Bears. And I do believe, I have them sweeping the Bears. I think Chicago's on the right track, but just a year or two away from really being able to stack up against Big Brother. Washington football team with an upset here. One, there's always a couple of weird, quirky games. We're actually going to talk about another one with Minnesota here in a week, or the next team up. But week 7, I think this pass rush against, again, a weak as we've seen it, Green Bay offensive line could give Aaron Rodgers some headache. Plus, this defense overall is just really, really good. So not only the pass rush, but the linebackers and the interior defensive line will help slow down the rushing attack with Aaron Jones. And then you have the secondary, which is really good and pretty deep as well. Take away Devontae Adams. What does Green Bay have after that? We will find out. And on the other side of the coin, I think Washington's offensive line is solid. Really, if it's just Zadarius Smith, I then worry about the rest of that pass rush. Can Rashawn Gary take a step forward? If he doesn't, then I really feel comfortable with Washington's offense being able to convert on some big plays. Fitzpatrick hooking up with the likes of Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown. He looked pretty good in the last preseason game. But also Curtis Samuel being able to run the football too. That's a continued weakness for this Packers defense, the interior part of the defensive line and the linebacking core. This could be a big Antonio Gibson week. I don't know. It's mostly a gut feeling, but I am really feeling Washington in this contest. On paper, you'd say the Packers are better, and I wouldn't argue with you. I think matchup-wise, though, I like Washington a lot there. Packers get back on the right track. Thursday Night Football, again, this is one of those exceptions to the rule, but I like Green Bay. It's not too far to travel, but this is a battle between elite offenses, and I like Green Bay a little bit more. Chiefs are just better. At home against Seattle, give Green Bay the edge. I think that's going to be a good close contest, though. 4 o'clock game. Seahawks are elite in prime time, so that's part of why I'm double checking there. Have them splitting with the. Actually, I have them sweeping the Vikings. That's a little surprising, but matchup wise, I think that could make some sense. This game in Lambeau, I know it could be a repeat of last year's formula for Minnesota, where they just use Dalvin Cook, run out the clock, make it a low-scoring contest. Minnesota won that game. Dalvin Cook was insane, so could be a similar formula. But I guess I'm feeling Green Bay twice. That's kind of a coin toss, though. Rams week 12 on the road. I think this is a little bit of vengeance for LA. Also, I think with the addition of Matt Stafford, they have a little bit more firepower to be able to keep up with Green Bay's offense. I don't know. Both these teams feel like they took a minor step backwards in some regards, specifically in key areas like the Packers' offensive line and maybe some of their depth on the defensive side. But then for, LA, you bring in Matt Stafford, you pay big money to Leonard Floyd. Their depth is a little weak. So at this point of the year, this could come down to whoever's healthiest in this game. Off the bye week, good time to then take on your division rival in Chicago. Have winning that one at home. Stealing one on the road. We talked about that one against the Ravens. At home against the Browns. Tough matchup because Cleveland may be able to enforce their will and pound the heck out of the football and set up play action and take the air of the ball, really. But at home, give me the Packers. Kind of already talked about the game a little bit. I don't know, man. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. I'll keep it where I have it, but I could definitely see the Vikings taking this game and splitting the series. But I'll keep it with Green Bay, and then they're better than the Lions. So I have the number 3 seed in the NFC. Still a really good football team. Minnesota Vikings, I think this team is going to be much improved this year. One, I like the offensive firepower, and I think a lot of that will be stable and consistent and can carry over into this year. And I think the defense, with players getting healthy, coming back from opting out, some of the investments they made in free agency, really like where this defense is at right now. Better than the Bengals, like him against the Cardinals, even on the road. But these are two teams that are going to be fighting for a playoff spot. So this could be especially considering Arizona gets out to hot starts normally under the Cliff Kingsbury era, the 2 years prior. This could be a close game, but I like the Vikings on paper there. At home against Seattle, I think Justin Jefferson can make some big plays against a cornerback group that I'm really worried about. Adam Thielen is a consistent elite route runner. He will be able to get open. And Seattle doesn't really have a great pass rush, so that's not really a game where the Vikings offensive line might be weak, like here week 14 that we talked about earlier with Pittsburgh. This is not a game where I really worry about their offensive line. They're going to have to be good. Obviously, it can't be a train wreck, but Seattle's not a team that's going to highlight that weakness for Minnesota. And then looking at the Vikings defense, specifically in the secondary, even if they're not elite, right? Like maybe Harrison Smith's not the best strong safety in football anymore, and Xavier Woods is okay. He's like a league starter. Pat Pete, Cam Dantzler and company. They may not all be fantastic elite players, but they are super deep in the secondary, and that will help out a ton. We don't have any guy who, like, pound for pound or just, overall talent-wise is as good as DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, but they have so much depth that they'll be able to stay fresh and try to minimize the big plays. This is definitely a game where Vikings normally rotate a lot of different defenses, but if you can keep Seattle in front of you, that's going to be huge, but that also might play into the hands of Shane Waldron's new offense. Seattle previously relied on big plays a lot. Maybe Waldron's able to add some new elements in there, but if Minnesota can minimize those big plays, I think they'll have plenty in their own right, so that's why I like the Vikings at home. Look at this game against Cleveland. That's really a coin toss. They're better than the Lions, better than the Panthers. Bye week, good time to take the Cowboys, and that was part of the reason I have them winning this game. Bye week, and they're at home. Give me Minnesota. Really interesting running game to watch here. They do it in different ways, but this could be like a really low-scoring 17-14 game in Maryland or up in Baltimore. This could be a really fun one, but I think the Ravens, 1 are a little better, 2 they're at home, so give me Baltimore. Big road win here for the Vikings. I think this could be an offensive shootout. Two teams that could pick on the other's secondary a little bit, despite them both having some depth to it. And Chris Harris is still a really solid nickel cornerback. I just think there's a lot of big play upside with, Kirk Cousins finding Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, maybe Irv Smith, D.D. Westbrook, nice number 3 wide receiver. And then for the Chargers, Justin Herbert just doing his thing with the likes of Keenan Allen and maybe Mike Williams if he's out there and healthy. Josh Palmer's looked pretty good. I just think this ends up being a high-scoring game. That's just a gut feeling. But because of that, give me the Vikings. I think they're just slightly better of a football team. We talked about the Packers games. I actually have the Packers winning both. I'm still kind of perplexed by that. And then here's the weird game I told you, I kind of alluded to. On paper, if everybody's healthy, give me San Francisco. I think they're a better football team. And they're at home, so then you would beg the question, well, TJ, why do you have Minnesota winning this game? And it's because if there's a team to slow down the rushing attack of the 49ers, it's a team with Michael Pierce, Dalvin Tomlinson, Danielle Hunter, CJ Wonnum. They might be bringing back Everson Griffin. Like, this team is built to stop the run. Plus, a healthy Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, if he's out there and healthy. This team can stop the run and force this team to throw the football. And whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance, that's not necessarily the strength of this team, outside of the fact that Kyle Shanahan's a fantastic, play designer. He can scheme people open. Like that 80-yard bomb for Trey Lance, the throw was on point, but that was a drawn up tutty. Like that play was drawn up to end in the end zone. So a lot of credit has to go to Kyle Shanahan. Trey Lance did put the ball in the money, made the right throw, and did it perfectly, but that was a Kyle Shanahan touchdown more than anybody in a lot of ways. So I think this is a game where this is going to come down to, can Shanahan get people open enough? And I just kind of like Minnesota. Plus, the weakest part of this 49ers team is probably their secondary. Jason Verrett's solid. Well, we'll see about everybody else. But I think there's going to be some big plays in this game for Jefferson, Thielen, Kirk Cousins alike. So I like the Vikings on the road here. It's kind of weird because I like the Niners more as a team, and they're at home. But this is one of those weird occurrences. I think Minnesota takes one in San Francisco. This game against the Lions, not much to talk about there. Vikings are just better. We already talked about this one. This game against the Bears, basically it's a season split with the home team getting that matchup. Monday Night Football, this could be a good step in the right direction. Plus, mobile quarterbacks have given Vikings teams some headaches, kind of like the Steelers of years past, where mobile QBs just find ways to have weird things happen against those respective opponents. So I think this is one where Fields could really ball out, look really good, get some positive press, win people over. But then I do see the Vikings winning in Week 18. Sandwiched in between that, big home win against the Rams. I like the Rams a lot. And I think they're just a better football team as of right now. But I think the Vikings be able to, run the football really well. Outside of Aaron Donald, this team kind of, the Rams that is, lack other big-time run stoppers. So Minnesota could have a big game in store for Dalvin Cook, especially if they can find ways to just run away from Aaron Donald. Easier said than done. And then set up big play opportunities down the field for Adam Thielen, Jefferson, all the guys I keep alluding to. And again, I like this team's ability to keep the football in front of them. They have such a deep secondary. If you can just take away big plays from LA, we'll see if they can do other things. We'll see if McVay is able to add that extra wrinkle into the offense. But this is probably a coin toss. Maybe the Rams are the winners of this game, but Minnesota at home, give me the Vikings. Same thing can be said. We talked about this game with Green Bay, and we talked about this game with Chicago. So 11-6, good for the 6th seed in the NFC. On to the Chicago Bears. 5-12 feels really low for me because I like this team. I still think the defense is good. It may not be elite like it was maybe 3 years ago, but it's still a good unit, and I am a big believer in Justin Fields. But it's just tough to peg when we'll see him because I think week 1 will be rough for Andy Dalton, and maybe you see him right away against the Cincinnati Bengals. But then after that, you have matchups with the Browns, which is tough, but then a game against the Lions, and I think this is ultimately where I think you do see the switch, because the Lions defense, not necessarily great, Raiders defense, not necessarily all that good, so I think 4-5, probably the time period to do that, but then you're doing that right before they take on the Packers, Bucks, and 49ers and Steelers, then the Ravens after a bye week. I definitely think a change is made after the bye week, but these two favorable matchups, it's like, okay, you could get them some confidence, but then right after you get them a little bit comfortable with the game speed going against weak defenses, he goes against, 4 of the best teams, 4 playoff caliber teams, 4 teams I have making the playoffs in my predictions. So that's kind of tricky, but definitely after the bye week, I think you start to see Justin Fields take the field. So again, this matchup against Baltimore, really, really fun, dynamic, mobile quarterbacks, good time there. Had to give the Lions some wins, so I know this isn't a long travel for Chicago to go to Detroit, but it's Thanksgiving. Weird things can happen. The Lions aren't necessarily always great on Thanksgiving. I don't think their record is all that good over the past, half decade to decade, but had to give the Lions some wins. So here's one at home. Ultimately, it's a series split. 2 teams that I don't think are quite there yet, to say the least. Bears winning 1 at home against the Cardinals. Cardinals tend to lose some steam. Again, when we talk about mobile quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, that'll be really fun. Packers are just better. Splitting the series with the Vikings, we already talked about that. Seattle's better, and they're at home. Yeah, definitely give me the Seahawks there. And then this could be one that you flip back for the Giants, get them back over 500. We'll talk about them here pretty soon. But I think the defense is good enough, and this is a point where you start to see Justin Fields really get comfortable, especially if he takes over in Week 11. by week 17, you might start to see him get his rhythm and his timing and him settle into a groove. So this could be a big win here in the sense of morale and adding some confidence for this team and kind of giving a one-game sample for what could be the future for Fields and this team down the line. So 5-12, this team has made the playoffs through the last 3 years, and Matt Nagy has worked wonders. So winning record, 2018 Coach of the Year, and that was all with Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles. So while I do think Andy Dalton is better than both those guys, I just think overall, record-wise, this team will take a step back. Partially, tough schedule. Two of the defense is getting older. I really worry about the secondary. Like, Jalen Johnson was good for the first half of last year, but then he got injured, and that was something that he battled throughout college. But even outside of him, what does the rest of the secondary and its depth look like? That really worries me a ton. Can Khalil Mack, can Akeem Hicks, can they stay healthy? I don't know. I just think there's an overall step backwards despite some positive things coming out of this season. And then we'll be quick here with the Lions. This recording's starting to get rather long. The Lions are they're years away. I like the foundation they're laying. This draft was one of my favorites. Penei Sewell solidifies a really solid offensive line. Fetu Melifonwu working with Aaron Glenn, the new DC, who I love. If you've been around the channel, you know I have a strong affinity for what Aaron Glenn will be as a defensive coordinator and potentially one day as a head coach. Did a lot of great things working with the secondary in New Orleans, and I think he is the guy to try to fix Jeff Okudah, get the most out of a super talented prospect in Fetu Melifonwu. Aaron Glenn's the guy to do it, and Amani Uruwariye, he's kind of in that same mix as well. Will Harris, Tracy Walker, young safeties. So I like a lot of the future for Detroit, but just right now, they're just not going to be able to compete. Worry about the wide receiver position. If they add someone like James Washington, that might change my outlook a little bit, but not a whole lot. Washington's also in the last year of his deal, so I don't know if the Lions are going to go out there and make a trade for him. Maybe that's somebody they target in free agency, though. The games I see them winning, the Eagles, I'm a little low on the Eagles, too. Especially compared to most teams, especially considering I think the Eagles could end up being right around 500. I see that in the realm of possibilities, but here you can see I have them with just 3 wins. So, while I see it, I'm not predicting it. The other wins, Arizona, I think this is one of the games where kind of signals the end for the Cliff Kingsbury era. We'll talk about that later. And then the game against the Bears we talked about. That's going to be a split series, but maybe this game against the Falcons, you throw it the other way, but being on the road's tough. Being on the road against Denver. If these games were in Detroit against the Falcons and the Broncos, I'd probably give them one of those two. Maybe this Lions-Bengals game could go the other way around. Yeah, it's just tough. The team's not ready to compete right now, and that's okay. They're building for the future. And from one of the worst teams in football to maybe the best, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have them 15-2. Their losses coming against the Rams week 3. Partially because they're traveling across the country. That makes things difficult. And the Rams, I think, will get out to a really hot start, have a little bit of a lull in the middle of the year, and then pick things up towards the end of the season. And then the Saints seem to find a way to play really well. Like, there's just some games and some matchups where no matter what teams' records are, they play each other well. Like Steelers, Ravens, they always play each other tough. Washington football team, Dallas, always that effect. Saints, Bucs seems to be another example of that. So Jameis Winston returning to Tampa Bay, getting some revenge, and everything else, W's. They win the opener of the year. They're better than the Falcons. History being written there. History being written in this game definitely gave me the Bucs. They're better than the Dolphins, Eagles, Bears. One of the 2 games against New Orleans, bye week. Good time for that bye week because I think Washington playing in Washington too. This game could be sneaky with how good that pass rush and defense overall is. Plus, these 2 teams played a really entertaining playoff game last year. But the bye week comes at a good time for Tampa Bay. The Giants, though, this is the one game I do want to highlight. I have the Bucs winning it, but Giants 2 years in a row now have played the Bucs close. And week 11 comes after the Giants bye week. Giants bye weeks in week 10. So Giants ideally are rested, getting healthy, have an extra week to prepare for this game. Monday Night Football too, so weird things will happen, but I think the Bucs win in a close game, maybe 28-24 or something along those lines. They're better than the Colts, better than the Falcons, yada, yada, yada. This game against the Bills could be close. Being at home definitely helps, but this is just one of the best teams in football, and my season preview video, I didn't put 17 wins in their win range because I didn't want to get flamed, but enough people commented it, so now I feel comfortable with saying it. If there's a team to go 17-0, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, without a doubt. They bring back everybody, not only players, but also the coaching staff. Like Todd Bowles didn't get a job. Byron Leftwich didn't get a job. Bruce Arians is still there. Year 2 for Tom Brady. He's not playing on a torn MCL. Yeah, it's an insane roster to look at for Tampa Bay. And then we get to the Saints, and you'll see I am really low on the NFC South outside of Tampa Bay. Part of the reason these teams' records are so low is because I have the Bucs going 5-1 in the division, that one loss to the Saints. But whether it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, Winston gives you a higher ceiling. I just am not falling in love with the Saints roster. Their offensive line's their biggest strength, but they always battle injuries. Alvin Kamara is a stud, but he's simultaneously right now their best wide receiver, and you can't ask him to do both things. Whenever you do get Michael Thomas back, that's a big boost, and maybe that's when you start to see this team win 3 of their 4 games down the stretch against weaker competition with the Jets and the Panthers mixed in there. Marquez Callaway might be somebody who emerges, but I do think of him ceiling-wise as someone who's a nice complement, number 2 wide receiver opposite of Michael Thomas. So a lot of question marks. Additionally, while Marcus Davenport has proven to be a pretty good player, is he worth moving up in the first round, giving him an extra first-round pick for? I don't know if he's been that good yet. Peyton Turner adds that rotation piece. You lose with Trey Hendrickson. He might actually end up being better. We'll see. The Saints seem to really like him. Demario Davis, he continues to be the entity of that linebacking core. Can he continue to do that? He's starting to get up there in age. I'm worried about that. Pete Warner, how much of an impact does he make as a rookie? Felt like a bit of a reach when they made that selection. The secondary, even if Marshawn Lattimore isn't suspended for some of the off-the-field stuff, Brian Poole, I love a lot, but he was banged up last year with the Jets. He's primarily been a nickel corner. You already have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I don't know. And this team really, it has a good set of safeties, but that's such a devalued position to where your strengths are in kind of odd spots and they're weak in really important positions like wide receiver, cornerback depth, and pass rush in a lot of ways. Like Cam Jordan still gets it done at a high level, but he's getting up there in age, and even if he's still good, does Marcus Davenport and Peyton Turner, give you what you had last year with 13.5 sacks out of Trey Hendrickson? I think they should be as good, but production-wise, it might not be there. So 6-11. I'm just not enamored with the Saints. Long story short, I really went on a tangent there, but off their bye week, maybe you flip this game, Monday Night Football against the Seahawks, but Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, 14-2 in primetime games. Primetime game here, give me the Seahawks. This game against Falcons, one of their wins. I have them splitting with Atlanta. Yes, I do. Falcons take final game of the year. They're just not as good as the Packers. Have them splitting with the Panthers, which is tough because I'm definitely low on the Panthers. Cowboys, despite being in New Orleans, they're a better football team. The Bills, being on the road, they're a better football team. Both those games on Thursday night. That's so weird, playing back-to-back Thursdays. Interesting. A little bit longer of a travel for the Bills, but I think they're just a better football team, so I'm not really worried about it. And Dallas doesn't have to travel too far, so give me the Cowboys there. Back-to-back wins here, and they start to get some momentum towards the end of the year, but yeah, I am just fading the Saints really, really hard. New Orleans fans are going to let me hear it, and I look forward to it. The Atlanta Falcons, there's a lot of pieces here, a lot of good players, specifically on the offensive side. Like I like Calvin Ridley. Matt Ryan still plays at a good level. The offensive line overall is solid. Starting to get a little weaker, but it's still a good unit overall. They have an interesting backfield with Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson. They've embraced the running backs don't matter narrative and have just found dudes who have been efficient, and we'll see if that can last over a 17-game full schedule. But this team's defense is putrid, man. And 0-9 on the road probably won't happen. They'll probably win a road game. Maybe you flip the Panthers series where, the road team wins each of those games. But overall, this team is it's past its winning window. So this team holding on to players from that window doesn't help their future rebuild process. Like Grady Jarrett's a stud. Deion Jones is fantastic. But those guys are just not going to be a part of a potential Falcons Super Bowl roster in 5 years' time. And that's gonna be what it takes, if we're being honest with ourselves. AJ Terrell, I think, played a really good second half. If he can do that over the length of the full season, definitely gives this team a boost. But they need pass rush. Dante Fowler Jr. has got to not suck. If you look at their depth chart, he is not listed as a starting outside linebacker. And that is embarrassing, considering he makes $11 million. So like him a little bit more than the Eagles. This game against the Giants could go either way, but G-Men at home, give me New York there. This game against the Jets could be a really fun shootout. Looking forward to that one. This game against the Panthers, like I said, maybe they take both games from Carolina. Maybe you flip the series to, instead of the home teams winning it, it's the road teams. Lions, Falcons, give me the Falcons there. I think they're slightly better. This Jags game, maybe you give that one to Atlanta. I could see that. But overall, I just think this team has passed its winning window and hasn't fully embraced the rebuild that's in store, but this will be the year that the bell is rung in my eyes. Carolina 3-14. I was kind of surprised, but it's just tough to find games where I like them on paper. Like I even gave them the Saints game. I don't really like them more than the Saints. And Saints with 6 wins, despite me being low on the Saints, 6 is pretty low. So I don't have Sam Darnold exacting revenge on his former team. I said that earlier. I think the Jets are just better. Have him losing one of the 2 games with the Texans. Had to give the Texans a win. I guess you don't have to, but I did. This game against the Giants, G-Man at home. I think the Falcons, this game could be a toss-up, but, give me Atlanta at home. And overall, I do see that series ending in a split. It helps Carolina has this bye week before week 14 when they take on Atlanta once again. But they're just not as good as New England. They're not as good as Arizona. Washington football team's better. Miami's better. Buffalo, Tampa, twice. New Orleans. I mean, this team is just not as good as who they're taking on. So part of it's a rough schedule. I also really worry about that offensive line. So a game against Washington, I think Chase Young is going to have plenty of production for that game to last. Jalen Phillips could put together a good Defensive Rookie of the Year campaign in a game like that. And that's part of the reason I like him against Atlanta here off the bye week. Atlanta just has such a bad pass rush. It might not highlight the weakness of that Panthers offensive line, but I still think the Sam Darnold experiment's going to work. And part of it is I think this will be his most productive year, but his grades will jump to where Teddy Bridgewater graded out last year, whether it's QBR, PFF, whatever metric you want to use. I think that's the level of production you'll get out of Sam Darnold. He's going to turn the ball over a lot, and that's going to cost this team. And this team's defense it has players I like, it has pieces, but it's not there yet. On to the NFC East with the Washington football team, have them going 11-6, 4 seed in the NFC. Love this team's defense, and there's a lot of explosive nature to this offense. So we'll talk about it. I think the defense, and they're at home. It'll take some time for the Chargers. Kind of talked about that already. The Giants swept Washington last year, and I think this could be a continuation of that trend just a little bit. Get the Giants winning this first one on the road, humbling Washington maybe a little bit. But then week 18, I think the football team gets their revenge. Bills are a little bit better, plus they're at home, so give me Buffalo on that one. Better than Atlanta, better than New Orleans. Tough game against the Chiefs. This one really could be interesting, but on paper, judging the roster, I like the Chiefs a little bit. The upset pick, we talked about this one with Green Bay. I think that pass rush can really take advantage of the weakest offensive line we've seen from Green Bay in quite some time. So like Washington there, this is going to be such a fun game to watch. If you, certain people have certain position groups that love watching. I love watching wide receivers and DBs. But for some people, that's pass rushers, and I encourage you. You've got to watch this game, right? Like Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, Shelby Harris going toe-to-toe with Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. This is such a fun game to watch if you love defense, love pass rush. Off the bye week, things get a little interesting here, but I'm pretty sure if memory serves, Bucs also have their bye week in week 9, so that kind of negates one another. The Bucs are just a better team, though I do think that game will be fun and interesting in our nation's capital. They're better than Carolina. At home against Seattle. I know this is Monday Night Football. I talked about how elite Seattle is, but cross-country trip and this defense and this pass rush is so good. Russell Wilson will be running all over the place, and the secondary is good enough to try to match and slow down what DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett can do, especially down the field. Not even just the corners, but Jeremy Reeves. Cameron Curl's more of a box safety, but him and Landon Collins both do that, and they both do it well. Jeremy Reeves, Bobby McCain, deep safeties with good coverage ability. Helps minimize the big play factor of the Seattle offense. And while I think by week 12, the Seahawks defense is playing a little bit better, it's still going to be one of the bottom third defenses in the NFL. And they'll give up big plays, especially considering I'm worried about that cornerback group. I don't know if there's a dude in Seattle that can match Terry McLaurin. And because of that, give me the Washington football team at home. Kind of a weird game here against the Raiders, but on paper, Washington's better. Plus, I think the continuing trend for John Gruden has been kind of similar to what Arizona's had, where they get out to good starts, capture some playoff buzz early on, and then peter out as the year goes on. So if that trend continues, give me Washington. I think they'll be playing some good football at this point of the year. Splitting the series with the Cowboys, home team taking them each, and then splitting the series with the Eagles with the road team taking both. So ultimately, it's a 4-game win streak with a couple of losses, then ending the year with a win against the Giants. Really interesting how this team ends the year with, 5 consecutive division games. We're going to find out what this Washington team is all about, and because of that, I think that does take a toll, and it plays a factor into this playoff game, which we will talk about here very soon. We're getting there. I promise, we're getting there. On to the Dallas Cowboys, 10-7, making it into the playoffs as the 7th seed. Love the offense, and alluded to it earlier. Opening day of the NFL season, I just don't see how they keep up with the Bucs. I like the Chargers at home here. Really high-scoring game. I want Dallas to win this game from the sense I don't want, first take and get up and everybody just be talking Dallas, Dallas, Dallas. They're 0-2. The Cowboys, what are they going to do? It's, the end of the world. Don't want that because I'd rather some other conversations be had. But regardless, I will give the Chargers this one at home. But then after that, these next 3 games, they should be favored in. Definitely these 2. Have them splitting with the Giants if memory serves. Yes, I do. So I have the home team winning each game, week 5, week 15, respectively. In New England, Foxborough is a tough place to play. I'll take the Patriots. Off the bye week, again, interesting because the Cowboys won in a game last year between these 2 teams, and that was with Andy Dalton starting. So now you have Dak Prescott, and that game was in Minnesota. So you would think that the Cowboys would have this one and you'd like them, but I think Minnesota's vastly improved, especially against the run. So Zeke Elliott might have a tough game ahead of him there, and they're deep in the secondary, so give me Minnesota there. But they're better than Denver, and they're at home. They're better than Atlanta at home. Chiefs, not one you're going to win there. Like them against the Raiders. Like them against the Saints. They also seem to play really well against the Saints. It feels like the last few years they've had New Orleans' number. Splitting with the Washington football team we already talked about. Splitting with the Giants, talked about that. This is going to be a really fun game. End of the year, but I think the Cardinals will lose some steam. And in a high-powered juggernaut offense versus offense showing, I'll take Dallas at home. Weird way to end the year, but on a positive note, they take on one of the worst teams in football. So a 3-game win streak to get into the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of buzz before this matchup against the Rams. But we'll see. We'll see if I have them coming away with the upset there. On to the Giants, 8-9, step forward. And if they go 8-9 with this schedule, I think they might hold on to Daniel Jones, especially if it's abundantly clear the offensive line is putrid. Though I do think Andrew Thomas gets better in year 2 at left tackle. Matt Pert feels like he might come up with that right tackle position just because long-term he's probably the guy. And maybe Nate Soldier is a cut candidate and somebody that, someone like Pittsburgh or Chicago with, Tevin Jenkins going down. I know they signed Jason Peters, but they still might be looking for another tackle option. And Nate Solder's been getting work at right tackle, so that could make sense. But he could be someone who gets cut on the last day of cuts and gets added on the waiver wire. So something to monitor there. But overall, this offensive line might hold this team back. But I haven't gotten out to an awesome start, 3-0. Wins against the Broncos, Washington football team, Falcons. Better than 2 of those 3. Helps being at home. And I'm splitting with Washington. We talked about that already. Coming back down to earth with losses to the Saints, Cowboys, both on the road, though. So it's a manageable 3-2 start. Things are looking up. And this is one of those weird games. I know I'm going to catch flack for this. And I already had Rams fans on the first time I did this video giving me a ton of crap for this game, but it's a 1 o'clock Sunday game with the Rams going across country to take on the G-Men, who have a good defense. I think the pass rush is better, and they're beyond deep in the secondary. And that's what really interests me with this matchup is the Rams have a ton of weapons. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tutu Atwell, Deshaun Jackson if he's healthy. Still have Tyler Higbee. But then the Giants on their other side, Julian Love, Jabril Peppers, Xavier McKinney. Those are all safeties. Then at the cornerback position, James Bradbury is fantastic. You sign Adoree Jackson. You draft Darnay Holmes a year ago. This past draft, you add Aaron Robinson. There's an abundance of talent in that secondary, and they already get enough pass rush from that defensive line. I think Azeez Ojulari adds to it that much more. 1 o'clock game, cross-country trip for the Rams. Give me the Giants in this game. This is one of those weird, quirky games that you don't know why or how it happens, because on paper, you would definitely like the Rams, but I'm taking the Giants in this one. And then they're better than the Panthers, so no surprise there. Chiefs, nothing to be said there. And then a home game against the Raiders. Raiders are coming off a bye, so this one could flip the other way around, but Gruden has a losing record off the bye week, so I am going to give it to the Giants. Off the bye week, I talked about it earlier, this game could get interesting. I will take the Bucs, but like I said, 28-24, this game's going to be fun to watch. Have them splitting with the Eagles, home team taking each game. Miami's just a little better, plus they're at home. Chargers, a little better, also at home. Talked about the Cowboys already. This game against the Bears, maybe you flip the other way around. Giants finished the year at 9-8 compared to 8-9. Like both teams' defenses, but the Giants are kind of on the up and up. Bears are, I think, going to be taking another step backwards. Still probably top 15 defense, but 2-3 years ago, you would have said top 3, top 5. Last year, they're 10, 12 mark, so I think they're probably in that 12 to 15 range this year, specifically because I worry about that cornerback group and then some of those the age component of some of those veteran players. So all that said, though, Justin Fields at home, I think this is going to be a game that, again, people will look at for Chicago and say, that's what this team can be. This is the potential. So I think this is a good showing for Chicago, maybe the best game they play all year against the Giants. Just a gut feeling. I could definitely be wrong. And then dropped their last game of the year against the Washington football team. So 8-9, maybe 9-8 in the playoff hunt towards the end of the season. Overall, the 9 seeds are just missing out. And then I said this in my season preview for the Eagles. This team could get up to 8, maybe even 9 wins because they have a good pass rush. They're deep at that position. You bring in Steven Nelson. I think Darius Slay gets better because there's a competent corner on the other side. Avonte Maddox is fine in the nickel. Anthony Harris could bounce back and be a really good free safety, kind of what he was 2 years ago. I just don't think the offense is going to be there with Jalen Hurts. And I do think Hurts is better than a lot of people want to give him or grade him out to be because of how much better he was, at Oklahoma versus where he was at Alabama. And even last year, he looked a lot better than what he was and what I thought he could be coming out of college. Full off season, ideally Nick Sirianni is a coach that, was hired to make Jalen Hurts work, but considering this team is already eyeing Deshaun Watson, and they were in on either Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson, it feels like this team is halfway committed to Jalen Hurts, so I think that might show a little bit. I think Devonta Smith does give you a legit number 1, allows you to move Jalen Reagor to your second target in that field stretching slot position, which I think is a better role for him. Travis Fulgham's totally fine as your third receiving target. They need to move on from Zach Ertz and free Dallas Goedert. They have just got to let that man thrive. Free Dallas Goedert. Get it trending on Twitter. Get rid of Zach Ertz. We've been waiting years to see what Goddard could be. We were waiting all offseason for Ertz to be dealt, cut, something. But yeah, 3-14, it's probably pretty low. This is the one team where they'll probably win more than 3 games, but it's just tough to find matchups that I really like them in. Maybe you flip this game with the Falcons. That would take the Falcons down to 4 wins, move the Eagles up to 4 wins. Maybe that's about right, but they're just not as good as San Francisco, Dallas, Kansas City. This is another weird game. Had to give Carolina a win, so maybe I don't, and Carolina's a 2-win team, but that feels pretty low for them. But yeah, these are the 2 teams where I feel like if there's going to be someone who supersedes what the win total is, these are the abundantly obvious ones just because I have them so low. They're not as good as the Bucs. Have them stealing one against the Raiders, which, Raiders fans are probably pretty upset about, and it's on the road. I just think Jalen Hurts might have his way against a defense that will struggle to stop the run. So I can see Hurts being someone who has a big game there. Big fantasy week for sure. Lions, this is another one where it's really, do you think the Lions are better? No, I don't think the Lions are necessarily better on paper, but they're at home and you have to give Lions some wins. They're not going to go winless. The Chargers are better. The Broncos are better. Saints are better. Giants, Jets, off the bye week. Maybe they make things interesting. I do have them getting 1 of 2 against Washington. Taking this game against the G-Men. So they do end the year winners of 2 of their last 3, which is an okay mark, but yeah, I'm just not. It's tough to find games where I really like the Eagles on paper. So that's part of why they have such a low win total. But we've reached our last division. We're starting to wind things down. The LA Rams, the number 2 seed. I was kind of surprised that that's how it shook out. Same record as the Packers. So this Week 12 game obviously has a lot of addiction to it. But coming off a bye week, I know they're traveling, but extra week of preparation, I think, plays a factor and ultimately moves the needle enough for the Rams. I like them right off the jump with these 3 games. I know this is kind of controversial because the Bucs are a better team, but the Bucs are traveling across the country, something you've heard me say 1,000 times in this video. But give me the Rams at home. I think they get out to a hot start. And then weird game against the Cardinals. Ultimately, I see them splitting with every team except for Seattle. I have them getting both games against Seattle, which this is a primetime game, but this is not a far distance to travel. But just over the past few years, LA has had Seattle's number. They've just been the team to match up with Seattle so well, the perfect hand in glove matchup there. And Aaron Donald always balls out against Seattle. I don't know what it is, but that man is giving Russell Wilson nightmares. And I think that trend continues this year. We talked about this Giants game. Definitely an upset pick there. It will make Rams fans upset. I'm sorry. They're better than the Lions, better than the Texans. Nice little soft week 7 and 8 there. Stack your lineups with Rams players. Tennessee, this is going to be a shootout, but the Rams have some defensive playmakers like Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams, even Taylor Rapp. I think is going to have a big year at that safety position. So definitely give me the Rams there. Have them splitting with the 49ers in week 10 and week 18. Home teams getting each of those games. Better than the Jags. Like them against the Cardinals, though it is a split between weeks 4 and 14. Talked about the Seahawks already. This Vikings game, you could probably bounce back in the direction and make the Rams 14-3. I just think the Vikings at home are just going to be able to get it done. That's just a gut feeling. I just look at that, and for whatever reason, something's telling me the Vikings. There's not much more to it, but when you're doing a complete schedule prediction for every team, you're going to have a few games like that. And then getting one on the road, so they kind of bounce back. Maybe you flip these games around, where the Ravens win this one at home, and the Rams take this one on the road. I wouldn't argue with you if that was your rationale, and especially if you said 13-4, you could flip these games. And then ending the year on a positive note with a win against the 49ers before taking on the Cowboys in the playoffs. So one of the best teams in the NFC. I think it does work with Matt Stafford. I think that is enough of an upgrade at the most important position in football that it hides some of the weaknesses this team has in regards to depth. They don't have a ton of offensive line depth if somebody goes down. Defensive line as well. But overall, I think the star power is there. I think Sean McVay does innovate that offense now that he has a quarterback who can do a little bit more and can handle more. So I really do like the Rams a lot this year. On to the San Francisco 49ers. This is who I had winning the NFC West when I first did this video. Come down a little bit. Originally I had them at 13-4. They had the tiebreaker in some way over the Rams. Now I have them at 12-5. This Thursday night football game was the one that changed. Everything else has stayed the same pretty much. So if you want some more in-depth thoughts and I don't cover enough, go back and check out that video. You should anyways. But really nice start to the year. Road games, especially if it's Trey Lance starting, which I don't know. Like, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is probably the starter until maybe the bye week or so. The thing is, they're trying to fix Trey Lance's mechanics, so there's just no timetable on when you feel comfortable with his throwing motion. So that said, though, if it is Trey Lance under center, great first 2 games. You're on the road, yeah, but the Lions, Eagles, you're going to win both those games. So that's a really nice way to kind of ease him into a comfortable schedule. But then things get a little more difficult. But I do love them as a matchup to the Packers. That pass rush is just going to give Green Bay headaches with, as I've said multiple times now, as weak and offensive lines we've seen in some time. Have them splitting with the Seahawks. Home teams getting both their games. This one's a primetime game. Yep, Sunday Night Football. So that kind of adds on to the narrative that Seattle's really good in primetime. And then you start out 4-0. Kind of a disappointing loss here, I think, for most 49ers fans. But it's right before the bye week. This team, especially after games against Green Bay and Seattle, they're going to be zapped a little bit. So Cardinals at home, get one on over them. But I have that as a series split. 49ers get payback week 9. But after the bye week, good time for it. Kyle Shanahan, Frank Reich. Can we talk about how fun that game is going to be to watch? Like, that is, and it's Sunday Night Football. I cannot wait for this game. We're going to see some really creative play designs. Especially if it's Jimmy Garoppolo, we're going to see creative offensive minds doing so much with Carson Wentz and Jimmy Garoppolo. And that is so exciting, which is such a football nerd things to say. Like, I can't wait to see how coaches make these maybe league average quarterbacks look like something other than that. But that's what I am, so I embrace it. So have the 49ers winning there. On the road in Chicago, I'll take a great pass rush against a potentially rookie quarterback. And even if it's not, Andy Dalton behind, is it Jason Peters now at left tackle? Then who's at right tackle? Is it still Jermaine Rafetti? That offensive line is looking really banged up, and I'm not really feeling confident whether it's Fields or Andy Dalton against this pass rush. So give me the Niners on the road. Getting payback against the Cardinals. Have them splitting with the Rams. Home team taking each of those games, week 10, week 18. They're better than the Jags. We talked about this weird game. I know this is an upset pick for sure. It'll probably irritate some 49ers fans, but give me the Vikings on the road there. And that compounds into back-to-back losses, prime time. Seahawks are going to win one of these games, so Seattle there. But then San Francisco gets back to their winning ways, back-to-back wins against weaker opponents, Cincinnati and Atlanta. Before this Thursday night game, and this is the reason I changed my mind, I mentioned it with Tennessee, Thursday night football, nearly cross-country trip, short week. I'll take Tennessee any day of the week under those settings. Otherwise, if it's like a regular Sunday 4 o'clock game, give me the 49ers. But short week, having to travel in Tennessee, yeah, I'll take the Titans for sure. They're better than Texans. And then the Rams get some payback from that week 10 loss. So 12-5 overall. Still a really good football team. I think there's just going to be some ups and downs, especially if it's Trey Lance here in the back half of the schedule. You'll see some of those ups and downs. But I still think this is a really good team that's well coached as well. Two more teams, the Seattle Seahawks, and this is a team I'm fading. I am not quite as hard as like New Orleans, but I just think this defense is putrid, man. I just don't get it. Russell Wilson gives you such a high floor. Like, this team won't lose or won't win less than 7 games. Like, this team minimum is 7-10 because Russell Wilson's a stud. And even 7-10 would shock people. Like, 9-8 truly might be their floor. And that's where I have them at. I think they're better than Seattle, but this Tennessee game worries me. I think the Titans offense will really showcase how bad that Seattle defense is. Think back to last year when Dak Prescott was playing, how bad that Seattle defense looked against the Cowboys offense, which we recognize the Cowboys offense is good, but like that Seattle defense just, it became an eyesore, and it was something that was the talking point from that point onward. And then 3 more consecutive losses. So a 1-4 start for Seattle. That might not happen. Maybe you flip the 49ers games. I don't know. Prime time? I don't know. We already talked about that though. But the Vikings, maybe Seattle just wins this game. But in Minnesota, like their ability to pick on a weak cornerback group, like the Vikings in that one. Already talked about the San Francisco game. And the Rams really do match up really well with Seattle. So I have the Rams winning both those games. So maybe it's just 3 straight losses. Seattle does take 1 of 2 from the Rams. Wouldn't be surprised. Makes the Rams 12-5. Maybe then they're not the winner of the division, and instead it goes to San Francisco. And in turn, Seattle gets to double-digit wins at 10-7. Not ruling it out, but I think the Rams take both games. Just my opinion, though. Seahawks against Steelers, talked about that earlier. Seahawks are just better, and I think they'll be able to get it done on the road. Better than both these teams at home, so take that any day of the week. Bye week, then Green Bay, so that makes things interesting, but I don't see this defense having enough pass rush or secondary talent to keep up, slow down that Green Bay offense. And I just think the Packers are for sure the better team. Getting a win here against the Cardinals definitely helps out, but overall, I'll see that as a split. Maybe they sweep, maybe give them week 18, and make it 3 consecutive wins to end the year. I really wouldn't hate that, especially considering we're about to talk about the Cardinals. I'm not really sold on Cliff Kingsbury, so I think this team's going to underperform, and he's going to get the can at the end of the year, but I'm spoiling things. Washington football team, that pass rush is, we talked about it earlier, that pass rush and that defense matches up perfectly to slow down Seattle. Primetime game, I know Seahawks are great in other situations, and maybe it's a weird 24-21, 21-17 Seahawks win on the road and kind of just solidifies this team, finds way to win games. Not saying that's impossible, but I just think Washington gets the job done. I think it's a good Washington football team too. Talked about this game already. Better than the Texans. Talked about the Rams already. At home against Bears for sure. At home against Lions, no doubt about it. And then maybe you switch this game with the Cardinals. I don't hate that idea, but I'll keep it as is for right now, just because it is a tough competitive division. So a split makes some good sense there. But 9-8, above average, above 500 record. There's some good players on this team, but I'm not completely sold. I think they have too many holes in important positions like pass rush, secondary, parts of the offensive line, and I am interested to see what this new passing game looks like, though, with Shane Waldron. I am intrigued. If there is a reason this team gets to 12 wins, I think it's largely because Shane Waldron maximizes the talent of that offense, and they put up so much points that teams just can't keep up. And that helps, not necessarily hide the weakness of your defense, but makes it less of a big issue. Final team, the Arizona Cardinals, 6-11. I'm just not sold. Right off the jump, I just don't think they're as good as the Titans or the Vikings. Bounce back with, they're probably better than the Jags, though they are on the road, so that's not a given. Have them splitting with the Rams, week 4-14, talked about that already. Splitting with the Niners. They're not as good as the Browns. Going to give them this one against the Texans. Not as good as the Packers. Have them winning this one against Carolina at home. And then, especially down the stretch. So you basically get through the first 10 weeks of the year, right? So it's, 3-2 after week 5, then 4-3, then you're looking at 5-5 here by the midseason point, so right around the playoff conversation. But I think things really start to derail, and then it really highlights the weakness of Cliff Kingsbury as someone who cannot make not only in-game adjustments or season-to-season adjustments, but in-season adjustments, and they lose 5 consecutive games against teams that just, I think, might be better. Seattle's definitely better. They do have their bye week, so maybe they steal this one away from Chicago. But I just think, especially because of injuries, like, is Chandler Jones playing in this game? Is J.J. Watt? I've done that twice now. Is J.J. Watt playing this game? But also this team's secondary is so bad. Like, who on Arizona is checking Allen Robinson? Like, maybe Malcolm Butler, but Malcolm Butler's not as good as Allen Robinson. And then if that's the case, Marco Wilson, Tay Gowan, guys I liked, especially Tay Gowan, but them against Darnell Mooney, I'm taking year 2 of Darnell Mooney against those rookie cornerbacks any day of the week. Plus Chicago's at home, so that makes it tough. Rams are better. Maybe they beat the Lions here week 15, and it's just a 3-game losing streak. Week 15, maybe they beat the Lions. It's just a 3-game losing streak, but you have to give the Lions some wins, and Detroit, I think, will find some interesting games to win. They're at home. They could really run the football well and exploit maybe a weakness of that Arizona run defense. I don't know. And it's a team that, while they don't have any great wide receivers, the secondary in Arizona is not great. So maybe a big game for Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe stretching a little bit there, but you could flip this one back to Arizona and make them 7-10. I wouldn't argue with you, but just got a feeling about the Lions in this game. Colts are better, Cowboys are better, and then splitting with the Seahawks, ending the year with a win, which we already talked about. Maybe you flip that one the other direction. You could do something where the Cardinals win Week 15 on the road, Seattle wins Week 18 on the road. They're still 6-11. It's another win from Seattle coming from Detroit. However you slice it, I don't think this team's in the playoffs, which is unfortunate because this team has a lot of star power. And ultimately 6-11 might be, like we talked about with the Bengals, the right mark to move on from someone I just don't think is the right coach right now for those two teams. You fire Cliff Kingsbury, you find the right person to be the next head coach and maximize the talent of Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt, Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, Chandler Jones. You got to give them an extension, fix the secondary, and then we're talking. So fix the secondary in the offseason, find a better coach, then things might be looking up for Arizona. We have finally made it to the playoffs, almost 2 hours into this video recording-wise, so we will make this quick. It's a very chalky outlook for the playoffs for me. Only road team that wins is San Francisco, and I think it's because Washington plays a ton of division games, I think 5 straight to end the year, like the pass rush between both these teams, but ultimately I feel a little bit more comfortable with the offense that Kyle Shanahan can draw versus that of Scott Turner with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So give me the Niners on the road there. Plus, I think being a wildcard team coming from the NFC West might hold more weight to it than winning the NFC East, which I think is a better division this year, but still not as good as the NFC West. And then all home teams here. Maybe the Ravens take this one from Cleveland, but I think Baker Mayfield has a big game here and really earns that contract with a playoff W. Titans like him more than the Patriots. Big play, the dudes really, and the Bills over the Steelers for sure. No disrespect to my Steelers. Rams over the Cowboys, definitely. Packers over the Vikings. Could get interesting seeing these teams in the playoffs, but I'll take the Packers at home. Divisional round, this is where things get really tough because the 49ers could make things interesting, but I will still take Tampa Bay. Ultimately, I think they're the best team in football right now from the top of the roster to the bottom. They have depth, they have star power. We'll talk about that later on. Rams, Packers, Rams at home. And it's so tough, but I think part of it is I think the Packers just between the offensive line and some of their important positions on defense, they're just not quite there. They don't have the depth. The inside linebacker position in specific is a little weak. What is Kevin King looking at as that number 2 cornerback? Is it Josh Jackson instead? Is it Eric Stokes? So I think there's just a few question marks, and I think the Rams get some momentum towards the end of the year and get hot. That offense can put up some big numbers. Plus, they're playing at SoFi. Home field definitely helps out a ton. Bills at home, Chiefs at home, so all home teams. That's hard to imagine happening, but that's the joy of doing this video in August. I'm definitely going to be wrong, but that's what we embrace it for. Conference championships, I will have an away team winning here. Do you think it's the Rams? Do you think it's the Bills? It's the Bills. Now let me explain. Let me preface. I think this game basically comes down to a drive or two at the very end of the game. The Bills have done a good job building and emulating an offense and a roster overall that looks a lot like the Chiefs, where they have a few defensive playmakers that can come away with big splash plays, change the course of a game, swing some momentum in your favor, and then throw for throw. If there's someone who can go and match what Patrick Mahomes can do, it's Josh Allen, especially when he's clicking and firing all cylinders and they're calling a good game and Stephon Diggs is getting open at a high rate. And to that point, there are some pieces in the secondary. DeAndre Baker's actually looked pretty good this preseason, but L'Jarius Sneed was good last year. Tyrann Mathieu obviously a stud. Juan Thornhill allows you to do a lot of different things. He can be a good deep safety. But I like this wide receiver room. I actually think I might like it more this year than last year. You lose John Brown, and the efficiency stats show that when he was on the field, this offense was definitely better. But I think Gabriel Davis will take a step forward and emerge as a deep threat. But Emmanuel Sanders can still be a deep threat guy. And he does a good job getting open in that 10 to 19 range. Similar skill set in regards to Stephon Diggs. So having another guy who can win in the intermediate part of the field, but also be a big play threat with Gabriel Davis, I think ultimately becomes an upgrade over someone like John Brown. And I think this, again, comes down to a shootout. And the Chiefs have made it to back-to-back Super Bowls. Making it to 3 straight is hard to see. So part of it is I'm banking on a trend against what we've seen. Like, making it to 3 straight Super Bowls is rare. So because of that, I'm kind of playing a numbers game and saying in a game that's down to the wire, the Bills make one more play or get that call or whatever the case may be and steal one from Arrowhead. Plus, Bills Mafia travels well, so that kind of negates a little bit of the home field advantage. Not a lot. Like, I still think this is obviously a huge advantage for the Chiefs to be at home, be the number 1 seed, but Bills Mafia travels, and the Bills are used to playing in crazy environments, so that helps a ton. And then the Bucs do get the best of the Rams. Ultimately, how deep this team is and how they can win in so many different ways, I think, is the difference over the Rams. But still, you get the conference championship, that's a positive sign moving forward, and I think that puts the Rams in a spot this next offseason where they further double down on their win now mindset, and things continue to get interesting there. So maybe in 2 years' time, I will take the Rams. I think when I first did this video, I had Bills and Rams in the Super Bowl, but after doing the preview video and studying everything, and there's just not enough things that could go wrong for Tampa for me to change my mind here. They're on to the Super Bowl. And in the Super Bowl, I really want to give it to the Bills because, like, Bills Mafia, and I love Josh Allen, and that would be such a cool storyline. But yeah, the Bucs are the best team in football, so I'd be crazy to do that. So I'm taking the Bucs. They have the star power. They have an elite quarterback. They have an awesome coaching staff, which if they go back-to-back, Todd Bowles is getting the job. Byron Leftwich is getting a job for sure. Those guys probably should have, Todd Bowles in specific, probably should have gotten the Eagles job in my eyes, but that's a different talk for a different day. But I think the Bucs do go back-to-back, which is crazy to say, but Brady's done it before. Why not do it in another situation, another location, and just prove that the Bucs have built a juggernaut of a roster and come home with a second consecutive Lombardi. But that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you all enjoyed. I know it's a long one. It's a lot to sit through, but hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, please hit that like button. It really would help me out a ton. This took forever to do. I'm very tired now, so a like would show that you appreciate me going through all that work. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content like this, football season's right around the corner, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It would help me out a ton. It would mean the world to me. And let me hear your thoughts on today's video, my predictions. Let me hear some of your thoughts. Who do I have too high? Who do I have winning too few games? Tell me some specific games you think I'm wrong on and why. Do so respectfully, please. I'm putting myself out there. But please do give me your thoughts down in the comment section. Let's talk about the rapidly approaching NFL season down below. That's going to do it for this video. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.